Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure some others will file in here, but we're going to go ahead and get started because I have some great panelists and a lot to get through. So I'd like to start out by letting them introduce themselves and the organizations that they represent. So let's start here with you.
Thank you, Simon Hokard, Director General of CANSO, and responsible for the show, actually. That's probably the easiest way to describe it.
And how do you think it's going so far?
Fantastic, obviously.
I thought you were going to say good, and I was going to say fantastic, so well done. Awesome. Andrew.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Simon, for having us here. Andrew Lebovich, Executive Vice President for the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, United States. We represent about 20,000 aviation safety professionals across 15 bargaining units within the FAA. And 315 FAA facilities, about 120 federal contract towers, and 4 Department of Defense facilities.
Tom?
Tom McRobert. I'm a Melbourne Air Traffic Controller, and I'm also the President of Civil Air, the professional association and union in Australia, representing around 1,000 controllers that operate in Australia.
Nick?
Nick von Schoenberg. I'm the president of the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association. We represent controllers in Canada from NAV Canada primarily, but also Transport Canada and Serco, and have approximately 1,850 members.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Winstanley. I am chair of the ATCOS branch representing controllers and ATM specialists in the United Kingdom and Gibraltar, and I'm also president of the Alliance, which is part of this group.
I know he's speaking English, but if you can't understand, I'll interpret. So just raise your hand and I'll let you know what he says. So we're talking about integration in the future. You see the industry out here and everything that they're working towards. So since we are at CANSO's conference, Simon, can you describe for us CANSO's vision of Skies 2045? Give us a kind of a little idea of what that initiative is all about.
Okay, thank you. I just feel the odd one out. Just want to, just reflect that. Feel safe at the end here. So it's not just CANSO's, actually. It's something called the CATS Global Council. So Complete Air Traffic System Global Council, which CANSO I have the privilege of chairing, but we brought the whole of industry together. So whilst it's facilitated by CANSO, it is the entire aviation industry. It's a vision of 2045, and I can't exactly remember the words. However, broadly, it's about having a seamless, integrated airspace which gives equitable access to all airspace users, whatever they are and wherever they're going. That's the important bit, because it's not just about what I like to call heritage aviation or heritage airspace users, classic people transport. I'm looking at an aircraft on the screen right in front of me. It's about all the different plethora of different users of airspace, small, big, large, fast, space, near ground, size of an iPad, size of a 747. So it's integrating all of that in a safe and seamless way. Really important.
And it does seem like a monumental undertaking. If we can start PowerPoint, because I'd like to point out this. I grabbed this from your website, okay? And I thought it was a pretty good description of what they're working towards. But I'll highlight this one portion where it says that they're to explore, imagine, and shape a shared vision of how our global skies can innovate and interoperate safely in the future. And there's a couple of key words in there that I noticed. Imagine, shape, shared, safety, innovation, okay? Before I go on to my next slide, I don't know, Nick, I'm gonna call on you. Did you want to add something to that? Yeah, please.
And just that the Global Alliance is also a member of the CATS Global Council, which is really important.
It is important, and we're going to talk about that integration. So let me go to Nick. Nick, can you describe the Alliance for us? Who are they? What do they make up?
Well, the alliance is formed by a number of countries, the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Spain. And interestingly, the reason we formed is because we share common interests. And looking at the quote or the piece that you put up from CANSO, our mission statement looks very similar to that. And so, I think that's an important sort of point to jump off from, is that there's a lot of common interest here. And sometimes people think of the, labor versus industry as an adversarial relationship, but I don't think it is in this instance. I think we all have a common interest in working together to build towards a better future.
I appreciate that. I agree. And I also went to your website. This quote is from the Alliance website. Look at that. Remember those words that we just talked about: integration, safety, collaboration, all that sort of thing. You see captured in their mission statement also. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting that two entities that are perceived to be at odds with each other actually share some common interests? I'd like it to open first up to the Alliance folks, and I'll let you pick which ones want to start. I believe that there's a distrust or skepticism of involving unions or labor in the development of our policies, procedures, our equipment, and everything else. Do you experience that? And if so, how have you overcome it?
Well, I think we've all got individual stories around how we collaborate, work together with our individual NSPs. But I think to make relevance to this in 2045, the fact we are sat here alongside Simon, is testament to Simon's personal input to get us here and get us involved with 2045. And quite rightly, we should recognise that, because the journey to get here hasn't been that smooth. There has been distrust around what trade unions do, about we appear to be blockers, we're anti-technology, we don't embrace technology, we don't embrace change. And I think from both sides, I don't know if Simon will comment, but it's been a difficult journey, and I've always maintained that we are the greatest facilitators of change that an ANSP or CANSO has, because we have a direct line. I hate this phrase. We have a direct line to the end user, who are our members. So, rather than going to the, what happens in the United Kingdom, the journey to get here today to be part of 2045 has been a long journey. It's a welcome journey, testament to Simon. But this is the beginning. First steps have been taken. It's how we develop the relationship from here, which, we're not always going to agree, but that's the challenge for both of us.
Any others?
I'll just add on to that. I do think there has been a historical perception that unions are obstructionist, are antagonistic, are the party that says no all the time. And perhaps as times have evolved, I think you'll see, at least from certainly the folks up here, that has changed over time, that we have become more engaged in collaborative approaches to the development of technologies, to the implementation of technologies, to the refinement of the airspace systems throughout the globe. And we can be, as Paul just said, effective facilitators of that change. And I do believe we need to change that paradigm of perception throughout the entirety of the system, so we can be successful in reaching more of that global harmonization.
Can you give me any actionable items that you've taken? You both mentioned the bumpy road that we've taken. Are there any actionable items that you would recommend towards that end? Nick?
Well, I guess I'd say, first of all, on collaboration, we hear that's been a buzzword of late. You hear it all over the place. And when you put it into action, it becomes a little bit more difficult, because there are elements or areas in which we don't necessarily agree, or we come from our common interests from different perspectives. But But I think that's an important thing to recognize is that both those perspectives are valid, and meaningful discussions are sometimes difficult to have, and we can't avoid having those discussions if we want to actually collaborate. We can't just talk about it, we have to do it. So, for example, I would say from the Canadian perspective, we just concluded a collective agreement. Collective bargaining is difficult. It's by its nature has an adversarial element to it. For the Canadian air traffic controllers, and something I really tried to drive home is we really have to take a little bit more of an evolved approach, enlightened self-interest, by actually doing things to try to add value to the company that we work for, because we are inextricably tied to their success. If NAV Canada is successful, then we're going to be successful as a consequence. And that was a difficult place to go with a collective bargaining committee, but I think we did so, and I think we actually concluded a really good agreement that gave the employees what they wanted to have or what they felt was important to a large extent anyway, and we also gave the employer something that was very important to their future success, which is the ability to bring more people into the system and train, because as we all know, short staffing is a common theme.
Tom, I want to go to you on this. I think that everyone in the audience probably has the same workforce that I do, the people that I work with. Tell me if you don't identify with this. The only thing that our people hate more than what they have right now is change, right? I mean, you just can't please some people, right? Tom, how have you sold to your workforce this idea of collaboration and working towards a common goal?
Difficultly, it's probably the best starting point. A lot of people think it's hard working with, industry, ANSPs. It's harder working with the members that I represent. I volunteer my time and trying to convince them of things, or even just make them aware of things. It's a famous saying: you go into a room with 5 controllers, you'll come out with 7 different opinions. That is the difficulty, is trying to relay, for example, a new technology and be able to talk about it without the people in the room having already an opinion on what that is. So I try and do it in steps. When I'm talking to people about what's coming, you go, what is it? What's the problem it's going to solve? Or is it going to make your job easier? And then go from there. And then you try and get people involved. If we do have a good collaborative approach, you're then able to say, okay, we've got 3 people that are really on board with this new technology. How do I get to other people to bridge the gap of end user to new entrants or new parts of the airspace? So I think that's the important thing. The way I approach it is to try and educate them, but then try and get them involved, because I think that's the most important part of demystifying some of the integrating that we're going to see in the future. Because people think, oh, they're going to change my job, therefore they're going to take it away from me. Or they're going to change my job and it's going to end up being harder. And they're the ones that we need to get, I suppose, start from a common goal.
I like that. Educate and involve. Absolutely. Andrew, I want to come to you for a second, and feel free to expand on that if you want. But also, you're unique in that you actually have collaboration written into your collective bargaining agreement. How has that been successful?
So, and let me start by stepping back to sort of elaborate on what Tom and Nick have said. So how do you build those successes? And it comes to the video you showed. You have to develop a relationship, right? And you have to be able to bring the workforce along with you. You have to have demonstrated successes. And that took time, that took pain, and that took missteps. But over time, we were able to work with, in this case, the FAA, both the ANSP and the regulator, to show that we can be a part of the development and implementation process so something is effectively and efficiently brought into the system. We had seen examples where technologies or processes were being placed into operation that were unsuccessful because they did not engage with the as Paul said, the end user, the rank and file, the operational perspective, and that cost time and money, and the industry had to backtrack. So by working closely and staying committed to showing, look, we can be of assistance of implementing new processes, new technologies in a collaborative way, that allowed us to develop those relationships and become more comfortable. Both sides. The workforce became more comfortable, and I believe on the FAA side they became more comfortable, which is what led to us, and through the vision of the leaders at the time, to say we need to formalize not just the process, but then enshrine it in our collective bargaining agreement. That was sort of the culmination of multiple years of effort, and it really took the vision of leadership at the time, both on the union side and on the FAA side, to say this is important and this is how we can collectively be successful.
I appreciate that, Andrew. And one of the common themes that I'm hearing from every one of you, and Paul, I want to throw this to you if you don't mind. Every one of them has mentioned missteps, a rocky road, there's been difficulty, etc. Has there ever been a challenge to not just abandoning this approach altogether and going to not a collaborative but a rather traditional way of doing things? It just seems like there's so many naysayers out there. When you do have those stumbles and falls, how do you stick with it?
You don't really have a choice. You can adopt an adversarial approach if you want to, but at the end of the day, who really wins? Working together, or a participant approach, or a collaborative approach, should be a win-win for everybody. So as Nick said, Nick wants, and we all come from different NSPs. We're all funded differently, but Nick's right. He needs NAV Canada to be successful, for his members to be successful. I'm a NATS employee. I need NATS to be successful. What we've seen with, working with industry, working with our own NSPs for the betterment of our profession is what it's all about. We want proper jobs. We need the jobs to be aided by technology where it suits, where it fits. And the global stuff, we've got to recognise that it's no longer a UK problem. It's not. You can't look at things in isolation. You've got to look over the horizon, over the international borders. For 2045 to be successful, we all have to come together and work together in whatever form that looks like. Otherwise, this is not going to achieve what Simon wants it to achieve.
I don't think it's just Simon. In fairness, I don't think it's just him. Did you want to add something, please?
Well, I just wanted to raise this concept of philosophy of abundance versus philosophy of scarcity, and I see it all the time with members. Cooperation doesn't mean that we're giving something up. Like, you can actually get more, and if you work together, you can build more, and there are more spoils to share for everybody. Everyone's better off. That's sometimes a difficult place to go. People tend to fall back to this defensive posturing, but I really believe that, and I think that's a commitment you have to make philosophically as a leader to try to add value for everyone's benefit.
So it's not just a zero-sum game. I appreciate that. It's the second time I think that you mentioned add value, and I think that's really important. Before I continue on, I'd like to open it up to the audience. Are there any questions at this time for our panelists? I'll call on you. Don't think I won't. Okay. All right. We will take questions. We're not going to just wait to the end. We'll take questions, so just raise your hand. Simon, come back to you. I was over at one of your booths here. The folks from Italy, ENAV, are doing a lot of really great work with digital towers. And they're up and running. They've got goals and matrix that they're hitting and everything. And I was talking to them, and I asked them why they've been successful to the degree that they have. And one of them said it's because everything is developed by controllers for controllers. Can you talk to me about the why this approach, and are you seeing other industry utilizing this to success?
I'm just trying to work out how to answer. I want to answer some of the other stuff you were asking over
Oh,
here.
okay,
I was.
absolutely.
Well, I will do it. I will do. Can I just make some
Please.
comments about the other things? So collaboration. We keep talking about collaboration, and collaboration is phenomenally difficult. True collaboration, because collaboration requires you to lift yourself above your own self-interest, if it's the interest for the wider good, in inverted commas. So whether that's from a union perspective or a management perspective, it's for the, you got to let all that go for true collaboration, which is a really, really difficult thing to do. The other thing I wanted to comment on was, change often gets confused with collective bargaining for money. And it's not, they often get meshed, sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose, but that can confuse the picture. I think change and being involved in change is separate, or can be separate to that thing. And the other thing I just wanted to say was, why do people fear change? It's because they don't know what it is. And that's where we're all responsible. I have personal experience with the man right at the end of the line there, where we were trying to change something very significant 15 years ago in the UK, and it was failing, significantly failing. And the impression was nobody wanted it, didn't want anything to do with it, and they were blocking. Actually, it wasn't the case. Nobody understood why. The why was missing. Not the what, it was the what and the why. Why are we doing it? What's important? Then once we understood the why, everybody was engaged about coming up with the how. So it's that it's painting that picture and a joint picture that we all understand. It's phenomenally important, which is why the vision is important. So I am coming back to your question in the end.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And I'm just going to refer to him as the man at the end. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. If you
Yeah.
have any questions for the man at the end, let me know.
So it comes back all around to ENAV, around digital towers. We love technology. I look out here and we are surrounded by technology, which engenders change. Something new, something shiny to go after. As this industry, we are absolutely still people-based, and we will be people-based for a very, very long time. People's roles will change, and they are going to change, but without the people, you can't use the technology. You can't develop the technology. So the only way of doing it is to get people involved in the conversations early on. Now, there's a real balance, and I think this is where the challenge comes in. What I think, I could recruit loads of mini-me's. I wouldn't be very great, I hasten to add. It'd be a scary place to be. But I would recruit a load of mini-me's to do what I think is the right thing. What do we need for 25 years' time, 30 years' time? And I'm not sure any of us on this panel really know who we should be recruiting or bringing in for that picture of 30 years' time. And that's the real challenge. So getting people involved to design what they want today is great. That helps with an iterative change. If you want to speed up change, I think we need to invite people in that don't know what we do today and have that conversation, have that clash of brain power and cultures and ideas. Then we will get to the right answer, I think, for the future. But it still means you have to have the people in the conversation. You can't sit in an ivory tower, no pun intended. You can't sit in a closed room, design something, roll it out, and expect it to be easy. That is absolutely the wrong way of doing it. I'm a big, passionate believer about that. So it requires listening, it requires working together is a phrase, but it requires collaboration. It requires real collaboration, which is rare. But when it does happen, it's fantastic.
And if you look at the scale of the CATS Council, like as a controller, we usually think about the controller and the pilot. That's the relationship, the people relationship. But what we're looking at here and being involved in some of these discussions, we've got new users, we've got heritage users, we've got unions, we've got any number of manufacturers in the room, we've got airlines and we've got airports. All of these people that have been involved have different people, and you've got to involve those different people and cross them all across again. It is a monumental task to get all these people together. And then you've got the regulators and regulator in ICAO as well. So when we talk about people, and Simon touches on this, you start by thinking about the people that we represent, and we're a tiny piece of this, and that's why this project and the discussions and the collaboration about what's happening is so important because it is so big. Because otherwise the collaboration will happen in different corners of the industry and you don't know the repercussions that will have and flow into other parts of the industry. So it's a really difficult and monumental task to get through.
I appreciate that you all saying the same thing. Thank you to the man in the middle. Thank you. This difficulty, challenge to it, but we're sticking with. The other thing I'm hearing is collectively we can just all agree that the regulators are the worst, right? Collaboration is applicable to everybody, but the No, I misunderstood. That's on me. Andrew, I want to go back to you for a second. We were talking about the developed by controllers for controllers, okay? And I know that in the United States there's a robust participation. Talk to us about the advantages of that.
So, and it's a lesson that has been learned over decades. So we have seen technologies, as I said earlier, that were developed in a vacuum by individuals who felt this was what was correct for the system, but when brought forward, didn't quite integrate properly and certainly didn't have the functionalities that were desired by the workforce. Because at the end of the day, and I think it bears repeating, the commonality of interest by all of the stakeholders in the aviation community is the safety of the system. I think we always have to default back to that because without a safe system, nobody's going to take advantage of utilizing the system, as we know. So to ensure the safety and then effectiveness of these technologies, by bringing in individuals who use the technology day in, day out, who use the procedures day in and day out, is going to be of paramount importance. And we have seen that in the airspace redesign efforts that we've done in the United States. We've seen that with the implementation of new technologies in the United States. And it doesn't just go with the development of those technologies or procedures, it also involves the training that is associated to ensure that those any change is properly implemented. Change management is a huge issue, and how do you bring it to the fore? And it does involve proper resourcing, it involves commitment to long-term implementation plans, because what we have seen in the past is technologies get implemented where the functionalities that are latent in the system aren't fully utilized because of improper training, improper staffing. We have decision support tools that collect dust because we just don't have the personnel in place to be able to use them. So at the end of the day, all of this wraps together for a long-term, comprehensive implementation plan, and it does. It starts with a product that is actually developed with a goal in mind that works for the system from the perspective of the operators.
I appreciate that. Any questions for our panelists at this point? Sir.
The most stupid question you can imagine. I am a journalist. I'm not even a trade journalist. So my question is the following. We all expect ever-increasing cooperation, interoperability, and at the same time, we go into a world of wars, which will be ever more fragmented. So how do you conciliate the two trends?
Nick, I'll give it to you first, and then I'll come over to
That's a pretty big question. Here's my answer. We try to do what we can with what we've got. You know, we exist in an arena, and we do what we can with what we've got, right? Like, we're not going to change the world. We have an impact, but I don't have any control about what's happening, what decisions are made in the Kremlin, or other than that. So we're trying to do a good job of doing what we do. Simple as that.
I think one way to maybe look at it is there are competing interests internally. New users versus old users, we're all trying to use the same. So I think we can set an example of how you can have competing interests but still get along and still come to a resolution in the end. You know, even though there's internal conflicts about whether I use the airspace or whether a new user uses the airspace, if we still collaborate and set a good example of how that can be done, maybe that's the best way to look at it, is that we can set a proper example to follow rather than react to the conflicts that maybe arise elsewhere.
So I'm reading a book on systems thinking, and one of the points they make is there are no actual boundaries. Boundaries are artificial constructs. Everything is connected to everything else. But to actually understand things, we have to draw those boundaries. And I think if there's anything we've learned over the last couple of years, it's the degree to which the system, the aviation system, is interconnected, and how small changes in one part can have impacts, big impacts on another part. And, so I would draw a boundary around, we're talking about aviation, what happens in the air. That's what we're talking about, and we have to recognize all of those things are interconnected. They're subject to forces from outside, obviously, but we can't control those.
In the description of the panel on the website, it asks, what is the role of the air traffic controller workforce in the CANSO vision of Skies 2024? Have we captured that? And what else do you foresee coming up over the next 20 years?
So these guys here are all included in the Global Council. That's just a tip of the iceberg. Right now, and we've got a Global Council meeting this afternoon to update. But at this point in time, there's a phenomenal amount of work going on. We've had the vision. That's great. Okay, we thought that'd be easy. We thought that'd be difficult, and it ended up being quite easy. Then we thought, okay, that's great. What are we going to do next? We come up with a roadmap. We come up with a roadmap. All the big jigsaw pieces are going to get there. We thought that's going to be a nightmare. Nobody's ever going to agree to that. We did that, so that was easy. And then we're into now we've got where we're heading. We've got all the moving pieces about how we're going to get there. But actually, what is it really going to look like when we get there? That's a massive exercise, and there's a concept of operation. And this year, and all the work today is all about really thinking about, so if this vision was a reality and all these building blocks were in place, what would it actually look and feel like? And we call that a concept of operation, but actually it's everything. It's all the how. What does it look like? What does it feel like? Who's doing it? What are the roles? How is it funded? And all that was work going on, and we're expecting the concept of operation to be delivered at the end of this year. That can't be done without hundreds of people across the whole of the world currently working on it, including air traffic controllers, including engineers, including software people, including airlines, including everybody else. So there's a massive amount of work that's ongoing that includes today's workforce for the future workforce. So the answer, that's a long answer to say, that's a great capture, it's a great start, but there's so much more work to do. And this is only the start. I think it was Paul, the man at the end, that said right at the very beginning, we're only at the start of this particular thing. But it has the potential, I think, to change how we operate or to collaborate all over the place in the future. It's not just air traffic. It's not just the controllers in the US. It's not just the controllers in New Zealand. It's about the air traffic service industry as a whole and all the people that work in it, working together. Because we all want it to be successful. It's one of the most rarest industries that I've ever come across. Nobody in our industry, nobody in this room gets up in the morning and thinks we're going to have a really bad day today. I mean, what a nightmare that would be. Everybody wakes up in the morning thinking today's going to be great. And then we solve it when it's not. So that whole belief mechanism, we all want it to be successful. We're all in it for the same reasons, to be successful. And therefore, this is a good model to do that with.
Yeah, I think Simon's very right. And the other thing, I suppose, is how we communicate that. I think I said at the start, you educate and then try and engage people. One of the things that I see with the knockers about where this is going, or the project and collaboration in itself, is they think that the job is going to change overnight. Obviously, over the next 20 years, the roles of whatever people have in aviation are fundamentally going to change. How that's going to change, and it might change one way and then it'll change back. We don't know. That's the bit where when I talk to people who go, we don't know what it looks like, but unless we're involved and we start trial and error, for the lack of a better word, before we implement anything, we won't know what it really looks like. So I think that's the real part that I try and tell people. Is that I don't know what my job will look like in 15 years. You know, I've been doing it for nearly 20 years. What that looks like in 15, I really can't tell you. But I'm happy to go along the ride and be involved to see what it looks like as we go. And it's not going to be flicking on a light switch. And that's what I think people get a little bit too focused on. Someone says the role of an air traffic controller is going to be different in 2045. You go, yeah, but it's not going to change tomorrow and then stay the same for the next 20 years. It's going to be developing over that time. And I think that's one of the errors where people start thinking about what it looks like. You go, what do you mean you're going to change my job? You go, well, again, we're not going to change it tomorrow. It's going to develop. And I suppose that's the better word to use. It's not going to change. It is going to develop over time.
As ever, Tom's kind of stolen my thunder. I was going to say exactly the same sort of stuff. It's, you know, it's evolutionary rather than revolutionary. But I just want to go back to, you know, what Simon was saying. You know, the easy stuff is easy. That's why we do it. It's the difficult stuff that causes the problems, causes the relationship issues. And for this to be successful, you know, we have to break down some of those barriers. You know, we've all got a role to play in that, not just Simon or us. The whole industry, as you're part of the council, have got to help break down those barriers, because there's going to be some really difficult stuff ahead, you know. But recognising it, trying to navigate around it is what we should be doing. You know, and I know if nobody else has got a question, I've got a question for Simon, which is, you know, what does success look like from your point of view for a relationship with us?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to waffle for a minute whilst I think of a really good answer. I think it's really straightforward, actually. It's one is for you to be included. So it's a sense of inclusivity rather than, oh, we ought to invite these guys in because we need to talk to them. It's a subtle difference to saying, where are they? They need to be here, they should be here. Well, not even that, you're just a part of the fabric. And I don't mean that as, I mean that in a really good way. So should you be a member of the council? Should you be much more inclusive in the whole of the CANSO community? Because actually, if we talk about those jigsaw pieces, this is a really big jigsaw piece. You know, if it's missing, the picture is incomplete. So it's about being a part of that big picture, part of all the moving pieces, and it's a natural thing. That's for me a success. And you know, so it's not about being invited, it's about being part of right from the very beginning. And if I can walk away in years to come to say, actually, you know, we created a community by which the social dialogue, whatever words you want to use, even that disappears. You know, the staff representatives are all included in all the stuff we talk about, both for today and for tomorrow, then that's a success.
With the only 5 minutes I have remaining, we've kind of talked about the implementation of technology and what that looks like. And Simon, you liken it to a puzzle, and I like that, with the added challenge that you don't even have a picture on the box to work towards, because we don't even know what that's going to look like in the future. Please, did you want to expound on that?
Well, it's a good point. That's why we started the Global Council in the first place. Everybody has their own picture, and that's a challenge. Certainly 2 years ago, Airbus had their picture, Boeing had their picture, and they weren't the same. And nobody really in air traffic had a picture. So the purpose of creating this is trying to create a coherent, joined-up picture that everybody can see. And I suppose, and the only other thing, it's a three-dimensional picture, which is slightly different, but that's a bit harder to explain.
And I want to just sort of comment on that, though. It is a complicated picture, and it's a picture that doesn't necessarily have continuity throughout the globe. There are going to be different aspects of those pictures in different locations. But what might work in place A may be differently approached in place B, but we have to find a way to be able to successfully operate under those different environments. So I think that is important. And the other thing, as we move forward, just to sort of revisit what has just been said, it is not easy. There are challenges, but the hallmark of successful collaboration is the commitment to recognize there will be missteps. There will be, I don't want to say failures, but there will be problems. And you have to be able to look each other in the eye and identify and say, we do need to move beyond this. How do we do that? How do you recover from perhaps some errant actions that have occurred? Because they're going to happen. It happens all the time. And we talk about resiliency, we have to be resilient as well.
I appreciate that. That brings us, unless I got any questions, that brings us to the conclusion of our time. I do have a question, however.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for this interesting meeting. I'm Philippe from Bordeaux ACC, French air traffic controller representative. Would you agree with this statement saying that the right to strike and the nuisance associated to it permits better agreements? And to what extent did you use that right in your own countries?
So we all have different. Not everyone on this panel will have the right to strike. In the UK, we do. We've not had any industrial action since 1981 or something like that, and even then that was what is deemed illegal. Now it's secondary action and support of civil service. Does the right of strike give you a stronger position at a bargaining table? I don't know really. We've never threatened it. We've come very close, but we've never threatened it because it's all about building relationships and solving the problem. If you ultimately are balloting for industrial action, which I believe everyone should have the right to do, just so I'm clear, everyone's failed, haven't they? You know, if that is the ultimate position where you get to, then all the relationships are broken down and you've not achieved anything. And that's a failure on both parts, you know. Does it make our position stronger? I guess you can argue it does, but it's not something you should just... I don't think you should throw it around like a piece of confetti. Yeah, it's there, it's in your back pocket to use. If it all broke down, yes, we have the right to strike. But the fact we've not had a strike since 1981 or something is testament to, I think, despite the fact we've had problems, we've always tried to work through those problems. And certainly from a UK perspective, we fought privatisation. I could go on for hours here, so I will shut up. You know, we fought privatisation. We kind of lost the battle, but we never took strike over action over it. And yes, we have a fully contestable airports market, and that brings its own problems. You know, I deal with 61 ANSPs, not just NATs, because of the market after working. We have the right to strike everywhere. We've not exercised it yet because we've worked at that relationship.
This will be the last, and I appreciate that question, and so the last time for a comment, but I want to go to you, Andrew, because striking is unlawful. It's not even on the table for you. Has that inability affected your ability to collaborate?
So I think you have to look at it right. We do not have the right to strike. We do have traditional industrial relations that we can fall back on. But what we have done is made a conscious effort to try and expand beyond the traditional labor relations mechanisms and create that environment for collaborative approaches where we can be more successful using collaborative techniques than we would be able to be utilizing traditional labor relation techniques. But we don't abrogate our responsibilities either, because we do have a legal obligation, under our statutes that we can utilize if necessary, but hopefully we have risen beyond that.
I want to thank our panelists and thank you for attending. I give you full permission to attack them when they leave here and ask them more questions. But in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and close this. Thanks for being here. Have a great conference.
Thank you.